Hi, coaches. Bastaras here. I received a few questions, or same question from a few students, and I thought instead of typing a long email, I will just record a short message for you. So first of all, congratulations to all of you who passed the readiness test. The active phase has already started. It may not be that active for the next maybe few days, a week, because the teams have just been formed. And I imagine that not many teams are quite at the stage when they are ready to ask for help. But at the same time, we have the early track. It's a much smaller track. It's only 1,000 people, but they have been working for a long time. And so originally, the plan was not to provide any coaching to the early track so that we can compare if the satisfaction, if the performance levels are different in the early track without the coaching compared to the late track with the coaching, with you guys. But it seems like there are a few teams there that are asking, begging for help, and we cannot just say no just because we want to do an experiment. So it is possible that Tim may assign some of you to help with the cases in the early track. The late track teams were formed, it's been a week, 10 days now. And so we will probably start getting requests for help. In fact, I know we already started getting some, but there will be many more in the coming days and weeks. And so Tim is reviewing those emails every day, and will be assigning you to the cases so that you have not too many of them. It's a lot of work, but at least you have some and have different cases so that you can kind of try yourself in different capacities, from providing feedback and recommendation on students' work to helping them resolve conflicts to maybe dealing with free writing and whatever other problems they encounter. But anyway, there is one question that came up from a couple of students, and that is, what do we do with the weekly comments? And again, the fine-tuned logistics of it, I will leave up to Tim. But the reason we share the comments with you in general terms are the following. So as you know, we have close to 4,000 students in the late track, and then another 1,000 students or so in the early track. And every week, students do weekly surveys, right? Progress surveys. And the last comment or the last question in that survey is, in your own words, describe how the things are going, basically what's going on, and if you need any help. Some students don't answer that question. They just say everything's fine. But most say a few words, and some actually say a lot. And so the reason we share with you those comments is, first and foremost, to give you this kind of behind the scenes look into what's going on in the global virtual teams. As a coach, as a manager, you have to be informed about the life of the teams. And there is no better way to do it than to read the comments from those team members. You essentially see their almost like diaries. I mean, that's their own, weekly journals of what's going on in the teams. Just reading that stuff is extremely useful. It's not like, obviously, you are a member of each of those teams, so it's not quite that same level of involvement. But when you read the comments of students, team members, let's say there are 6 on the team, and you read all 6, it's very, very, very informative. And so by reading those comments, you elevate yourself above the crowd of many, many coaches and managers who don't have the privilege to see what's going on in almost 1,000 teams. And so I would spend a lot of time reading those, just simply as you read, your Facebook feed, to know what's going on with your friends. By reading what's going on with these teams, you will develop the intuition and the understanding and the knowledge of basically what's normal, what's typically happening in the teams. Now, I believe Tim will assign you a specific subset of teams that you will have to read, and study more in depth. And I guess that makes sense. You cannot read all 1,000 comments or comments from 1,000 teams. But at the same time, if I were you, I would try to read as many of those as possible, because that's how you develop that, as I said, understanding, sense, intuition about what's going on in teams. Now, that's for your education, for your information, for your experience. There is also something we would like to get out of this. Namely, there are many students, there are many teams that do need help, that need coaching, but may feel shy, may feel uncomfortable to approach us directly and ask for help. At the same time, when they answer those questions in the survey, in many cases, they indirectly hint and sometimes overtly hint or say that they need help. So they would talk about, a situation in the team, and you read the comments and you see there is a conflict. And so we would like to identify those cases and then proactively reach out to them, not wait until they specifically ask for help. But if you read something about a problem in the team, we reach out to them and say, we read your comments and it seems like there is a problem. Would you like some help? And again, if you find cases like this, send them to Tim and say, okay, Team 549, it seems like there is a big conflict in the team. Would you assign me to that so I can work on it? And so Tim will try to assign one of you to each of those cases so that you can investigate, so you can, reach out, offer help, and then see what happens. And in my experience from the last semester, students are very, very appreciative when we do that. So when you approach them and say, I hear that there is something, problematic going on in your team, would you like some help? They always say, oh, yes, sure, please. So they don't feel comfortable to ask for help directly, but when offered help, they always appreciate it. And then obviously, again, you shouldn't push it too far. So you just inquire politely and say, we read your comments and there seems to be a problem. Could you tell me more? And if they say, if that's fine, we have it under control, you don't do anything. You just submit a case report saying that, talk to the student, he said it's fine. And then maybe we'll reapproach them again if the comments persist about the problem next week. One interesting thing about those comments is that you see them from every single team member. And so that's where the real value comes from. When you hear a story from one person, almost always it is a little misrepresented. Especially when there is a problem, people always talk about it in the way that makes them look good and others look bad. So it's called self-serving bias. If there is a problem, it's somebody else's fault. If there is a good, successful situation, it's my contribution. And so it's only when you read comments from every person on the team, you start forming a more holistic picture, and you will see that everybody's blaming everybody else, for example. And so, as I said, those are the things that you normally cannot experience or figure out when you are yourself a team member, because in that case, you only see your own perspective. Here, you will see all 5, 6, 7 perspectives, with whatever the number of people, and that's useful. And that, by the way, applies to if you are assigned to a case. Like, for example, if Tim tells you that Team 25 asked for help, I would first go and read the comments from that team, from those team members, for all the previous weeks to know what's going on in the team. And then I would approach the team and say, you asked for coaching, so tell me more. And sometimes you will see that what they tell you when you ask them is actually different from the comments they've been leaving before. And again, gives you a good idea as to what's going on. And the third reason we give you those comments is because, again, one of the things we would like you to do, or you probably would like to do, is to conduct a research, right? So conduct a research project or write a reflection paper. And so our requirement is that at the end of the project, you will show your newly gained knowledge and understanding by writing a paper. And that paper can be simply your observations or reflections or whatever you've learned. But it may be a good idea to talk about what you've identified or detected as far as the trends or tendencies as you were reading those comments. I mean, this is fascinating stuff. I've read much of them, not all of them, but many of them. And as I said, you notice that people worry about, for example, task-related issues in week 1 and 2, and then slowly morph and talk more about the personal issues towards the end. And then the conflicts usually happen in the very beginning and in the very end, and all kinds of things like that. And so over time, you kind of develop this sixth sense. You can kind of predict what's going to happen in this situation because you've seen it so many times in the comments and you know how they developed. So interesting stuff. And so if you identify some of those interesting trends, it could make a wonderful paper, a paper that you can present at a conference, a paper that you can show to your employer, potential employer or current employer, a paper that you can publish. And so what I'm trying to say here is, with the comments, try to read as many of them as possible. I would read them team by team. So if you cannot read all of them, then read them, from all the comments from this team and all the comments from that team. And then if Tim will tell you to focus on teams, let's say from 100 to 150, obviously those 50 you have to read very carefully. But I would still try to read the other ones just, to know what's going on in other teams. And lastly, I know there were some delays with initiating you to the active phase. Tim probably have sent you explanations. I know he started in a new program, MBA program as a student, relocating now to Spain from Germany, I believe, and he's been traveling back and forth. So I know that he's been busy, and to my knowledge, he's been a little late on some things, but apparently he's pretty much done with his travel, so it's going to be more active now. So my apology for those delays. Sometimes it's hard to coordinate them. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions, let me know. Always happy to hear you. You have my contacts. You can email me, and yeah, stay in touch. Thank you.